As Christmas comes, it's time for you to make a miracle, so stay tuned to find out how. In addition to talking about miracles, we're going to look at Tony Robbins' personal story about how his personal experience shaped his life. Before we begin, if you enjoyed today's video, please consider sharing it with others who might find it of interest and help build this amazing community. If you're new here, let me be the first to welcome you to the channel and consider subscribing for more practical inspiration. So with the holiday season coming into full swing, I wanted to do a video on Christmas, or at least the spirit of the season, and thought about what it entails. Now, we all know that it's become very much a consumer season to buy and indulge in things we don't necessarily need, and for those who are religious, they may spend the time in church or revisiting the story of Jesus' birth. However, personally I enjoy Christmas as it's very much a season of giving. This might be to give presents to friends and family, spending time with loved ones, or throwing parties. All that aside, what doesn't often get as much attention, but can be life-changing for people, is when people give towards a good cause. So with this in mind, I decided to look online for stories and came across one on Buzzfeed that caught my eye. It's from someone named Brittany and goes as follows. I was about 10 and my family was really struggling financially. It was a few days before Christmas and a stranger rang the doorbell and handed my dad a wrapped box. We all sat at the table and my parents opened it to find an envelope full of cash, as well as gift cards for myself and my 3 siblings. My parents asked all around to try and find out who did this, but to this day we don't know. It's touching to know people do things like this not for praise, but out of the goodness of their hearts. Now, beyond the amazing part of the giver in this instance remaining anonymous and not taking credit, what's important is in this particular story, by showing an act of kindness, this particular individual helped shape the future of this family. The kids, all 4 of them, got to take pleasure in the season and ultimately got to enjoy the holiday. However, more importantly, the act of giving money to support the parents may have been life-changing for the family. People who know about financial struggles know the difference between being able to support your family and being out on the streets can be dependent on the kindness of others. Who knows what this family would have been through had it not been for the anonymous giver in this instance. Once debt accrues, it's very hard to recover. And this is where the idea of miracles come into the season. While the person giving might be somewhat oblivious as to how bad the family was struggling, it seems that on receiving the gift the family's circumstances changed significantly to the point where Brittany felt compelled to share the act of generosity with others in a publication. So, the first lesson today is to remember you might not be thinking you're giving much, but whatever little you can give can alter the lives of others. This sort of situation also occurred in Tony Robbins' life multiple times and shaped him to become who he is today. I'm going to recount 2 particular situations where he's talked about this in various interviews and seminars. The first is when he was young, growing up in a broken home with his parents fighting over the circumstances they lived in as they stressed over their situation. He recounts a particular moment where a man came from seemingly nowhere to donate the family food.
My life is shaped by a lot of events, but one of the most powerful was somebody doing these kind acts for my family. When I was 11 years old, we had a really, really tough Thanksgiving where there was no money and no food, and we wouldn't have starved. We always found a way to get something, but we weren't going to have a Thanksgiving dinner, that's for sure, certainly not a feast of any sort. And my mom and dad at the time were fighting like cats and dogs and saying things that once you say them, you can never take them back. You know the kind of stuff I'm talking about? And my mom was screaming at Father about how he couldn't even take care of his own family, and it was horrible. And I have a younger brother and younger sister. I'm the oldest. So I was trying to keep them from hearing this conversation, and then a miracle happened. Bang on the door. I'm the oldest. They're screaming, so I go answer the door. And I answer the door, and standing there is this giant man. I was this little boy. And he's holding this huge box of food. And beside him on the ground was a black pot with an uncooked turkey in it. And he said, "Is your father home?" And I said, "Just one moment." I was like unbelievably euphoric. I thought, this is a gift from God. This is going to change it all. This is going to make my mom and dad happy. It's going to be unbelievable. So I go, and my father is screaming at my mother through a closed door to the bedroom door. And I said, Dad, there's a guy at the door. And he goes, "Go, you answer the door." I said, "I did. He's got to see you." So I kind of teased. I said, "Dad, you got to come." So he said, "Fine." He made one last yell at her, and he walks to the door. And I'm waiting there just can't waiting to see his face. And my dad opens the door, and this man's standing there with this big box of food. And my father did not get happy. He looked at this man, and he raised his voice to him, and he said, "Look, we don't take charity." And then he took the door to slam it in the man's face. But the man was a good-sized man. He put his foot there and smacked his foot and bounced back open. He said, sir, this is not charity. Everybody has tough times. Somebody knows you're having a tough time. And they want you to have a magical Thanksgiving. I'm just the delivery guy. He said, "Please take this." And my father said, "We don't take charity." He went to slam it again. And this time the guy put his shoulder against it so he couldn't do it. And then my father's staring at him. It's like these two males starting to get in this intense mode. And one's just trying to give a gift, and I'm freaking. And then the guy said something that I'll never forget, and in moments I wished he hadn't said. But he found a way to force my father. He's holding this thing, and he looked at me, and then he looked at my dad, and he said, "Don't make your family suffer because of your ego." Now my dad's level of energy increased, but he was also trapped. You get it? So he took the food, slammed it on our table, and slammed the door in the man's face and never even thanked him.
Now, in this particular story, he talks about how his father's pride was getting in the way of the well-being of the family. But what's important to note is it's the generosity of strangers that helped care for a family struggling immensely to help feed them in their time of need. Whether Tony's father wanted to acknowledge it or not, that moment was a miracle for the family as they were able to eat in their hour of need. Again, it just goes to show the power of giving and the effect it can have on others. However, the defining story of Tony Robbins was surely when he was a little older. In this circumstance, he had little to no money left in his bank account. He had loaned a friend $1,000 and wasn't able to get in touch with him as he was trying to get it paid back. With very little money, he went to an all-you-can-eat restaurant to try and eat as much food as he possibly could with what little he had. At this moment, he saw a boy with his mother, and on being impressed by the boy's demeanour and manners, he approached him and gave him everything he had left in his pocket to pay for their meal. While his circumstance was dour, he gave what little he had for the happiness of others. On reaching home with no money and thinking in the best case scenario he would have to go days without food, he received an envelope. In it was $1,000 he was owed with interest and a letter of apology from his friend. The fact of the matter is, Tony Robbins received what many would consider a miracle in this moment, and it fundamentally changed the course of his life, as it was at this point he made the decision that if you give, you will ultimately receive in return. That moment, that miracle that meant Tony Robbins was able to survive, gave us the man he is today. One who empowers others, changes the course of lives for the better, and a man who is using the income from his best-selling books to feed those who need support. And again, in this moment you see the miracle of giving. In Tony's case, he decided it was his decision to give to the boy and mother that ultimately led to some kind of divine intervention to save his own life. Importantly, it was his experiences as a child and the kindness of a man giving his family food that shaped his future and ambitions to feed the poor and hungry. Even if you don't believe in miracles, the truth of the matter remains that if you give something of value to others, you can still receive in return. This can also be applied to careers and what you do for a living. People are willing to pay for what they consider of value in life. So, if your primary focus always remains on give value to others, you can monetize your approach to help make your living. It's a simple principle, but one of incredible power. Tony Robbins is the man he is today because he experienced miracles of these sorts in his own life. People gave to him, and that compelled him to take action to give to others. On the back of that principle, he's achieved phenomenal success. And this is where we go back to the original point. This holiday season is at its most powerful because it reminds us of the generosity and kindness mankind can have. It's a season in which people can actively seek to support one another and change the course of another's life for the better by doing a good deed. Just as it was for Tony Robbins and just as it was for Brittany in the story from Buzzfeed, do something for someone else, because while for you it may not seem like much, for them it could mean life itself.
Well, when I was 17, my mom kicked my dad out. He went back east and kicked me out, and I survived by scratching up enough money each day and then going to the smorgasbord and like loading up for the winter, just eating all I could to make it last a day or two. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I walked, I didn't want to take my car and the gas or pay for parking. Didn't have that kind of money. And I walked, it was 3 or 4 miles from Venice to this place in Marina del Rey. It's still there. And it's called El Torito. It's this little Mexican restaurant that's on the water where all the, the amazing yachts are. And I thought, I'm going to go there and I'm going to absorb this abundance environment because I'm so scarce. And I'm going to eat all I can possibly eat, for $5.95 of this tacos and salad.
Incredibly healthy, energizing.
Of course,
food.
totally
Yeah,
energizing. Like something I can go have a good sleep afterwards and forget all this, right? And I went in, I loaded up for winter, and I ate all the stuff, and I'm looking out there, and it was a beautiful day, and it was gorgeous. And so I got up to go pay, and as I got to go pay, in the front door walks this little boy, probably 8 years old, and 7, 8 years old. And he was dressed in a suit, and he's just like, kind of demure like you right now.
If anything, I am certainly demure, as you well know.
That's I well know. But sincerely, he was just really, I don't know, there was something about this kid. He had this air about him, and he opened the door for his mother, and he pulled the chair out for her. And I don't know, something about it just struck me emotionally very deeply. And I was just touched, thinking, this little boy has got so much heart and class. And so I walked up to him. I paid my bill and walked up to him, and I said hi, and I introduced myself, and I was nobody. Who the hell's Tony Robbins? No Tony Robbins. And he says,
who is this gigantic?
Yeah, that's what he's really thinking is not there. And I said, I just want to tell you, I watched you for the last few minutes. I said, I watched you open the door for your lady. I saw you pull out the chair. I saw the way you looking in her eyes and giving her full attention. I said, you are a class act. And he looked at me and I said, and taking her lunch, that's awesome. He goes, well, she's my mom. And I said, that's even more cool. And he said, well, I'm not taking a lunch because I don't have a job yet. I'm 8, and I said, and I looked at him, I said, yes, you are. And I didn't have any plan. I just reached in my pocket, took all the money I had in the world. It was like $19 and some change, whatever was left after that. And I just sat down in front of him in front of the table. And he looked up at me, his eyes got big as garbage can covers. He goes, what's that? And he smiled, and I said, that's yours. He goes, I can't take that. And I said, yes, you can. He said, how come? I said, because I'm bigger than you are. And then I didn't say another word.
Every time.
I didn't say another word. I just turned. I didn't even look at his mom. I wasn't doing it for attention. And I walked out that door. And I didn't walk out that door. I flew out of that door, man. I had no car. I was walking home, I just felt like so alive. I felt so free. And I should have been scared. I got no money. I don't know where I'm going to feed myself. You gave away last minute. There wasn't an ounce of fear in me. It was like in that moment, scarcity died. It just died. It was out of my life. And I went home that night and I had no clue what I was going to do, but I was like excited and inspired and I started writing out this plan and I thought, well, people fast all the time. I can fast for 4 or 5 days. It's probably good for me.
Meal.
I can eat after that meal. And I got this little plan in my head and I'm going to work it out. And I woke up the next morning and I had no fear in me and I'm going to go work my plan and the old snail mail arrived. And there I get this old envelope in the old days, right? Tear the thing open and it's a check from the guy who wouldn't even return my phone call for more than $1,000, either some interest in, and, $1,200 in those days would cover my butt for 2 weeks to a month, right? It was like, and I started to cry. And, I'll never forget, I was thinking to myself, what does this mean? And I decided that meant that I was being rewarded for doing what's right, by not operating out of scarcity and fear. It was spontaneous. It was authentic. It felt right. And I did what felt right. And I was rewarded. And I believed in my mind. I still believe to this day. It may not be true, but that was grace. And, so from that day forward, it was just like, just do more, give more, share more, create more. And what you need will be there. It's like air. You don't stop to think about when you take a breath, whether it'll be there or not. It's always going to be there.
Yeah.
You just got to do your part.
Thanks for watching as always. I want to know what good deed you'll be doing this holiday season. Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more like this, please share the video, leave a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this.